what sort of content do you want to capture around it? So at a high level, you've got your system detail and technical data models. There's also sort of, there's a relationship between these things. You might have technical definitions in your glossary that sort of define how you, like in a business glossary, you would say, this is what a, an active customer is within our organization. And that definition in the glossary should be independent of whatever data system it is. But for each data system, you might have a technical definition, and that's where it sort of links to the information in your catalog. But you also have within the data catalog information supplemental content. So these are things, and you might hear me say, or we'll probably say several times here, I'm going to talk about kind of raw or just like synchronized information and curated information, right? So when you say, I've got a data system here that's a database and, SQL Server database here that lives, and all of the tables and columns and everything, that's the technical data model. There's a certain amount of information that you can derive from that database that's just technical details. However, that doesn't always give you the full context information around what's in there. So either because it's not well commented, or even so you're not getting the information around like what is private data or security classifications of that information, or the reasons or definitions of those things. So you've got supplemental content and attributes that are not sort of in the database, or additional curated details about what this is and why it exists and who owns it and all that kind of stuff, which will go into a little bit more detail. And then you also have this concept of policy attributes where you can layer on top of that. So around security classifications and privacy code or data retention policies and all those kinds of things. So there's sort of this raw uncurated content, and then the curated content that requires some additional, non-technical information that you're going to classify on top of that. So your overall data system inventory contains, information about the high-level systems, the technical data models, any supplemental content that is not derived from that data model directly, and any policy attributes. And then it's maybe it's a relationship with other content and other data governance content like the business glossary. One thing I'd like to point out is a lot of people, when they talk about the catalog, particularly if they're coming from the technical perspective and they talk about a business glossary, they often talk about adding definitions to your data catalog. And it's something you need to be a little bit careful about. So if I've got a column in a table that might be Social Security number or whatever, I might have a business glossary definition for Social Security number that points directly at that. But I think it's a better way to think about it is that one of the attributes of the business glossary is what what specific data system fields are related to it in terms of technical definition. Then the other way around is saying for this data system, what's the definition? Because a definition isn't always one-to-one, and also the definition shouldn't be about defining a business glossary definition. It shouldn't be about defining an entry here. It should be defining a general business term and then a specific instance of it here. Now we go into a lot more detail in other presentations about separating functional and technical information and how to link them and think about them. But I just want to point that out. So as you curate it, business glossary definitions can be born from your data system, but they still should be system agnostic. All right, so a little more detail around what type of information you want to capture around your system inventory. So like, what is it? Meaning like, oh, what's this system? Oh, this is the database, the human resources database from our ERP system. Why does it exist? Well, it's for HR or whatever. Who owns it? Who manages it? Where does it live? How do you get access to it? If there's any vendor or internal documentation provided for it, and then the policy kind of attributes, is this contained, secure, all that kind of stuff. So you can have a whole lot of information at a system level that you want to track about things. Sometimes people track, what does it cost? When does it get renewed? Or whatever, all kinds of details. How big is it? What's the backup strategy? Any of that kind of information is just good to capture, but you need to have it existing first. But it's primary thing, like, what is it? Why does it exist? Who manages it? Where does it live? How do you get access to it? Is really important things to capture. Then you have the data model, right? So the data model is information that you've ingested about the full set of data that's available in, either the database or in the spreadsheet or the API or whatever that is based on it. And so that's the full technical technical metadata as exists. Any supplemental information that you're going to put above and beyond what's documented in the technical database, additional policy attributes at the object level within that. And then Also, being able to track and understand changes, right? That's an important thing. So as this data model has versioning, right? There's new tables, there's things that have been obfuscated, things that have been added, things that have been changed. And being able to track that is important, and that's sort of an advanced feature if you can get to it. So that's the type of information you want to capture, right? The point here is this information here is kind of uncurated content, the imported data model, full technical model. So if you can get ways, and there's lots of tools that you can use to generate or derive or data model content. And so being able to link to that or import that information is incredibly useful in your inventory. And I really like this, I want to say it's important that this is something that can be relatively easily created depending on what tool set you have, and doesn't require a bunch of curation, so that you can bring this information in to those who need it pretty easily, and that brings in an enormous amount of content for people to use for understanding your data. And then the rest of this kind of stuff is curated information, requires people to fill that in. This is a little bit easier to do at the system level, a little harder. It takes a little more time to do down here. But if you can get this stuff in, it really can set the path for a great, rich inventory.